The wind in the north was sharp like a sword. Snow fell heavily across Winterfell. Jon Snow stood on the walls, looking at the white fields stretching far and wide. The dead were marching again. Even after the Great War, whispers of strange movements beyond the wall had returned. Jon, now living in the north beyond the wall with the free folk, had seen shadows moving in the night. He had to return. Jon made his way back south to Winterfell. He rode alone, quiet and thoughtful. The north had changed. Bran was king now, ruling from King's Landing. Sansa was the queen in the north. But Jon knew this was not a matter for kings and queens. This was about survival. At the gates of Winterfell, Jon was not welcomed like a brother. The guards eyed him with doubt. But Sansa came herself. She looked older, colder maybe, but still strong. "You said you'd never come back," she said. "I had no choice," Jon replied. The dead are not finished. Inside the great hall, they sat by the fire. Jon explained what he saw. Villages beyond the wall were empty. No blood, no bodies. Just silence. Just ... gone. Sansa listened, but remained quiet. "I believe you," she finally said. "But the North is tired of war. We barely rebuilt after the last one." "It's not a war we can choose," Jon said. "It's death. And it's coming again." Sansa hesitated, then nodded. "We'll send ravens." But Jon knew words wouldn't be enough. They needed action. They needed people who understood war, people who had faced death and survived it. And so, Jon left Winterfell again, this time heading south. He rode fast, not stopping until he reached the Riverlands, where rumors said Arya Stark had returned from her long journey across the sea. He found her in a quiet village, dressed as a common traveler, sword by her side, eyes always watching. "Jon?" she said, surprised but smiling. "You look different," Jon said. "And you look old," she laughed. He told her everything. Arya's face turned serious. "I thought it was over," she whispered. "I thought we were free." "So did I," Jon said. "But we were wrong." Without a second thought, Arya packed her things. "If death is coming again, let it find me fighting." They needed one more person. Someone who had once stood on the other side, but had changed. Someone who knew how to fight and win. Someone unexpected. Jaime Lannister. Rumor had it that Jaime had survived under the rubble of King's Landing. Crushed, but not dead. Rescued by strangers. Healed slowly, and now living quietly in the Stormlands, under a false name. Jon found him in a small house near the sea. Jaime opened the door with one hand, the golden one long lost, replaced by a simple wooden limb. "You've got some nerve coming here," Jaime said. Jon looked him in the eye. "The dead are marching again?" Jaime laughed bitterly. "I've done enough. Let the young ones fight." "But you're still breathing," Arya said, stepping forward from the shadows. "Which means you still have a choice." He looked at her, then at Jon. After a long silence, he said, "You really think this isn't over?" Jon nodded. "No one is ready. And by the time they believe me, it might be too late." Jaime sighed, looked at the sea, and said, "Fine. One last fight." And so the unlikely three, the bastard of Winterfell, the faceless girl, and the Kingslayer, began their journey north. Not for glory, not for honor, but for the survival of all. As they rode back toward Winterfell, dark clouds formed behind them. The cold was returning. The air itself seemed heavier. Winter, once again, was not just coming. It had already begun. The road to Winterfell was long and cruel. Snow kept falling, and the wind screamed like angry ghosts. Jon, Arya, and Jaime rode in silence most of the time. They didn't talk much, not because they didn't want to, but because every moment felt heavier than the last. There was something in the air, something old, something wrong. At night, the cold bit through their clothes. They made small fires, ate little, and slept with one eye open. Arya, always alert, noticed the signs: first trees with frozen blood at the roots, animals dead with no wounds, just empty eyes and stiff bodies. "It's starting," she said one morning as they packed up camp. "What do you mean?" Jaime asked, pulling his cloak tighter. Arya looked at him. "They're close." "I can feel it." Jon said nothing. He already knew. He had seen it before: the signs, the feeling, the silence before death. They reached Winterfell just as the snow turned to storm. The sky was dark even in the day. Sansa met them inside the castle walls. Her face was pale. "We received word from the Eastwatch ruins," she said, her voice shaking. "They're gone. All of them. No warning, no battle. Just gone." Jon exchanged looks with Arya and Jaime. It had begun. Inside the war room, the mood was grim. The northern lords had gathered, but their voices were full of doubt and fear. "We fought this war before," Lord Trewyn said. "We lost thousands. We can't survive another." "We must," Sansa said. "This time we're not waiting. We strike first." Some nodded. Others looked unsure. "Strike what?" one asked. "We don't even know where they are." Jon stepped forward. "They're moving fast. If we don't act now, they'll surround us before we even see them." Jaime leaned on the table, studying the map. "We need a trap. Something to draw them out." Arya pointed at a narrow valley near Last Hearth. "They'll pass through here. It's the only way south without breaking through the mountains." Jon nodded. "We take a small force. Hide in the valley. Burn it behind us once they enter. Trap them in fire and steel." "But what if it's not enough?" Sansa asked. Her voice was low. Jon looked at her. "Then we die fighting." That night the castle was quiet. Soldiers sharpened blades. Blacksmiths worked through the night. Ravens were sent across the north. Jon stood on the ramparts again, watching the snow. Arya joined him. "You ever think about just running away?" He smiled a little. "Every day." She gave a short laugh. "Same. But we can't," he said. "We're the only ones left who know what this really is." Down in the yard, Jaime practiced with some younger fighters. His wooden hand made it harder, but he still moved with grace. He was slower, but his mind was sharp. He saw things others didn't: weakness, fear, opportunity. Later, in the hall, the three of them sat together by the fire. No wine, no music, just heat and silence. "I never thought I'd end up like this," Jaime said. "Fighting for the Starks." "You're not fighting for us," Arya said. "You're fighting for everyone." He nodded slowly. "Maybe that's worse." Jon looked into the fire. "They're not just dead men. They remember. They hate. They don't want to kill us fast. They want us to suffer." Outside, the storm howled louder. It was more than wind. It sounded like screaming. Jon stood. "They'll be here in 3 days. We move at first light." That night, dreams came to them, dark dreams. Jon saw the wall breaking again. Arya saw her face on a corpse. Jaime dreamed of Cersei, her eyes full of fire. But none of them spoke of it in the morning. They rose, dressed, and prepared. This wasn't just another war. This was the end again. And they were the only ones standing between the living and the cold silence of death. The valley near Last Hearth was deathly quiet. Snow fell like ashes, coating everything in white silence. The small force Jon led was made of the bravest, not the strongest, not the most skilled, but those willing to die without hesitation. Old men, scarred women, even young boys barely able to lift a sword. Winter had taken many, and the north had little left to give. Jon stood at the edge of the narrow pass, his cloak heavy with snow. He looked over the men and women who had followed him, some from Winterfell, some free folk, a few even from the Riverlands. All of them had heard the stories. All of them knew what was coming. "This place will be our shield," he said, his voice clear. Once the dead enter the pass, we burn the exits. Then we fight. We don't run. Arya sat high above, on the rocks, scouting with sharp eyes. She saw nothing, but she felt something like ice crawling under her skin. Every hour it got stronger. "They're close," she whispered to herself. Jaime stood near the southern end of the pass, giving orders to younger soldiers. He moved with purpose, ignoring the pain in his body. His face was harder now, more serious. He no longer cared about songs or honor. He just wanted to do one last thing right. They set the traps, pits filled with fire oil. Ropes stretched across the snow to trip the charging dead. Archers hidden behind rocks, ready to rain arrows. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. That night, the cold grew worse. The kind of cold that sank into your bones and whispered lies into your mind. Jon stood watch, his sword lone claw in hand. Ghost, his white direwolf, paced quietly beside him, growling low. Just before dawn, Arya slid down from her perch. Her face was pale. "They're here." And then the air changed. It was like the snow itself stopped falling. The wind paused. The world held its breath. Then came the sound like bones dragging through the ice. A deep, groaning hum that rattled the stones beneath their feet. The first of the dead appeared from the tree line. Dozens at first, then hundreds. Eyes blue like shattered glass. Skin gray, torn, broken. They moved without fear, without pain, without mercy. Jon raised his sword. "Light it," he shouted. The free folk at the rear lit the traps. Fire burst to life along the walls of the pass, trapping the dead inside the narrow canyon. Screeches filled the air as flames licked at their frozen flesh. Then came the real charge. It came like a wave crawling over each other, climbing the walls, rushing toward the living. Arrows flew. Spears struck. Swords met bone. But it wasn't enough. Arya moved like shadow and smoke. Every strike she made was perfect, clean, silent. She danced through the dead like a ghost herself. Jaime fought with one hand, using speed and smarts. He didn't try to overpower them. He let them come, dodged, and stabbed them in the head. Over and over. Blood black and thick covered the snow. Jon was everywhere. Swinging Longclaw, leading, shouting, bleeding. The dead knew him. They reached for him with more hunger than the others, as if they remembered what he was, who he had been. Still, the living held the line. But then, the cold got stronger, so strong it burned. A shadow appeared above the ridge, tall, pale, wearing armor of ice. Another White Walker. Arya turned her eyes toward him. "Jon," she shouted. "We've got a problem." Jon looked up, and his blood ran colder than the snow. The White Walker raised a spear of black ice. Behind him, more of the dead began to appear. Giants, wolves, things twisted and half-dead. They had walked right into a trap, but it wasn't the dead who were trapped. It was them. And this time, the dead were ready. The White Walker stepped forward, slow and calm, like he had all the time in the world. His blue eyes locked onto Jon's. Behind him, a horde of dead giants pushed through the trees, their huge feet shaking the ground. The fire traps had stopped some of the whites, but now the flames were dying, snow smothering them out. Jon felt it in his gut. This was different. This wasn't like last time. The Night King had been defeated, yes, but something had survived, something older, maybe even worse. "They're not mindless," Jon muttered, gripping Longclaw tighter. "They've learned." Arya appeared at his side, breathing hard, her blade dripping with black blood. "That thing's leading them. It's not just one White Walker. There are more, 4, maybe 5. I saw them in the trees." Jaime was backing toward them, sword red with the blood of the dead, face pale from exhaustion. "They're driving us in." herding us like cattle. Jon turned fast. Pull the forces back to the central ridge. Fall in tight. Now. But the message was too late for some. One of the fire pits exploded as a giant stomped straight through it, scattering men like broken dolls. Screams echoed across the canyon. The dead began climbing the sides of the valley. Whites threw themselves into the rocks, breaking their own bodies just to make a pile others could climb. Within minutes, the cliffs were no longer walls. They were ladders for the dead. "They're surrounding us," Arya shouted. Jon's mind raced. They needed a way out. A second trap. Something. Jaime slashed at a white, trying to climb his back. "We're not going to hold this pass. We were never meant to," Jon said darkly. "We were supposed to stop them here, long enough for the others to prepare." Arya gave him a sharp look. "You didn't tell me that." "I didn't want you to stay behind," Jon said. Arya didn't answer, just stabbed another white in the skull and kept moving. The dead were everywhere now. Arrows didn't matter. Fire barely slowed them. Ghost fought near Jon, tearing through corpses, his white fur turning black with gore. And then the White Walker raised his spear and threw it. The ice spear cut through the wind like lightning. It hit a free folk warrior right through the chest, slamming him into the rocks. The body froze instantly, flesh cracking and turning blue. Arya flinched. "We can't fight that thing head on." Jaime wiped blood from his eyes. "No, but maybe we don't have to." He looked up at the ridge toward the tree line. "If we can split them, if someone draws the White Walkers away." "I'll do it," Arya said at once. "No," Jon said quickly. "We stay together." "I'm the fastest," Arya argued. "I can disappear into those woods. Lead them out, buy you time." "She's right," Jaime said. "She's the only one who can move like that." Jon looked between them. His heart was heavy, but he nodded. "If you're not back in an hour," Arya smiled faintly, "then light the valley. Burn them all, with or without me." She vanished into the rocks before Jon could answer. Meanwhile, the White Walker stepped down into the pass. The cold grew sharper with every step he took. His armor was cracked and old, but his presence was powerful, stronger than the Night King ever felt. The whites moved faster around him, more focused. Jon stepped forward, Longclaw in hand, Jaime beside him. "This is it, isn't it?" Jaime said. Jon nodded. "Feels like it." The White Walker raised his second spear, and then a howl, not ghost, echoed across the trees. Loud, wild. The White Walker turned his head slightly. Arya had struck. Jon didn't see it, but he felt it. The shift in the wind. The focus of the dead breaking. Just a little. Enough. Now. He shouted. "Push to the ridge." They charged forward, not to fight, but to escape. Jaime led a group of archers to cover the retreat, while Jon and Ghost fought toward the far wall. Bodies fell around them, dead and living. Arya's diversion had worked, for now, but it had cost them nearly everything. And as Jon reached the edge of the pass, his heart dropped. The second White Walker stood ahead, waiting. Arya ran through the forest like wind through the leaves, silent, fast, deadly. Her breath steamed in the cold air, her feet barely touching the ground. Behind her, she heard them crashing through the trees, the dead, wild and hungry, following her scent, her movement, her heart. But she wasn't afraid. She had faced death before. She had seen it wear many faces. This time was no different. She weaved through twisted roots, over frozen streams, through the dark pines. Her goal wasn't just to run. She needed to draw them away, as far as possible, and find a way to kill at least one of the White Walkers. If she could do that, the whites would fall like they did in the Great War. But this new breed of White Walkers was not the same. They were smarter, quieter. One of them was already tailing her from the side, not rushing, just watching. She felt its eyes like knives in her back. Arya ducked into a cave near the hill. She pressed herself into the shadows and slowed her breathing. Her fingers touched the handle of her dagger, the dragonglass one Jon had given her long ago, still sharp, still deadly. She'd kept it close all these years. And it came. Silent steps outside. Not Whites. They were louder, clumsier. This was him. The second White Walker. Arya saw him clearly now. He was different. Not made from a child of the forest, like the Night King had been. This one had armor made of twisted black bone, a crown of ice grown into his skull, and eyes that weren't just blue. They burned like lightning storms. She stayed still as a stone. He walked past the cave entrance, paused, then turned his head slightly, like he smelled her, and smiled. Arya's blood ran cold. He knew. She moved fast, faster than ever before. She darted from the cave, slashing low, but he caught her wrist mid-air with impossible speed. He threw her against a tree. Pain exploded in her back. She hit the snow hard, gasping. The dragonglass dagger flew from her hand and disappeared in the white. The White Walker approached, slow, deliberate. He reached for her face, not to kill, but to look into her eyes. And then he spoke, in the old tongue. Not English, not Westerosi, but somehow she understood it. You carry many faces, he said, but none are yours. Arya's eyes widened. You are no one, he whispered, and no one dies alone. She pulled a hidden blade from her boot, Valyrian steel, Needle's little cousin, and stabbed upward. But he vanished. Gone, like mist, and she heard him again, behind her. Wrong face, she turned, slashing wildly, but there was nothing. Then the trees twisted, the cold thickened. Shadows moved without wind. She was not in the forest anymore. She was in a place beyond it, a place between worlds. Suddenly, faces appeared in the trees. Her mother, her father, Robb, Hodor, Ygritte, all of them dead, all of them watching her with cold, empty eyes. She screamed and backed away. Then a voice broke through it all. Arya! It was Jon. She blinked, and the world snapped back. Snow, trees, cold, her dagger, her bleeding hand, and the White Walker, still standing in front of her, but no longer smiling. Jon and Jaime burst through the trees behind her, blades drawn. Ghost charged first, slamming into the White Walker and knocking him off balance. Arya didn't hesitate. She dove for the dragonglass dagger, rolled, and drove it deep into the White Walker's heart. He didn't scream. He didn't even move. He just shattered. The whites in the forest collapsed instantly. Silence fell. Arya stood shaking, eyes wide. He was different. I know, Jon said, breathing hard. They're not like before. Jaime picked up a shard of the White Walker's armor. He wasn't just a soldier. He was something else. Arya looked around. We need to go. There are more. They turned and ran back toward the valley. But far behind them, deeper in the trees, the first White Walker stood still, watching, and beside him, a girl, no older than 12. Pale skin, black eyes, a crown of frost. And she was smiling. By the time Jon, Arya, and Jaime reached the ridge overlooking the valley, the snow had turned to sleet, stinging their faces and blurring their vision. The battle below was chaos flames rising, bodies piled high, screams of both the living and the dead echoing through the pass. But the tide had shifted. When Arya killed the second White Walker, hundreds of whites dropped in an instant. The ones left were slower now, clumsier, disoriented. Their hive mind had taken a blow. It gave Jon and the survivors a chance. The North's ragged force was falling back, not retreating, but regrouping. Jon slid down the ridge, barking orders, rallying fighters who had lost hope just minutes before. "We can still win this," he shouted. "Hold the line." Jaime collapsed against a rock, catching his breath. Blood ran from a gash above his eye, and his wooden arm hung useless. But his sword was still in his hand. "I thought we were done," he muttered. Arya stood beside him, breathing hard, her face pale. "We would have been, if Jon hadn't shown up." Jon turned to both of them. "We need to talk, now." They ducked into a small cave near the edge of the valley, away from the cold wind. Jon explained what followed them out of the trees. "She looked like a child," he said, "but there was something wrong with her. Not dead, not alive, something else." "She was with the first White Walker?" Arya asked. "Yes," Jon nodded, "and he wasn't leading her. He was following her." Jaime stared at him. "What does that mean?" Jon hesitated. "It means the White Walkers aren't the top of the chain anymore." Arya's eyes narrowed. "She's something worse." Jon nodded. "I think she's the one controlling them now." They fell into silence. The fire in the cave crackled, but it didn't feel warm. Outside, the screens were fading. The battle was ending for now. Then Arya said, "She spoke to me. Not with words, not directly, but I felt her. In my head, she showed me things. My family, my fears. She knew who I was." "She got inside your mind?" Jaime asked, his face dark. Arya nodded. "She's not like the Night King. She doesn't just kill. She plays with you, twists you, makes you doubt yourself." Jon clenched his jaw. "This isn't a war anymore. It's a game, and she's winning." Outside the cave, the survivors were gathering. Fires were lit. Bodies were burned. The North had lost more than half its force in the pass. Jon knew they couldn't take another hit like that. Sansa arrived the next morning with reinforcements from Winterfell. Not many, but enough to hold the line. She found Jon near the pyres. His face was blackened with ash and fatigue. "You didn't tell me it was this bad," she said. "I didn't know until I saw her," Jon replied. "This isn't about walkers anymore. It's about something older." "Older?" Sansa repeated. Jon looked at her. "There's a power behind them. A girl, or something wearing the face of one. She's the true enemy now." Sansa looked shaken, but didn't let it show. "Then we kill her." Arya stepped beside them. "It's not that simple. She's in our heads," Jon said. "Even now. I feel her." Jaime joined them, limping slightly. "If this girl can reach into your mind, control the dead, twist White Walkers to her will, she's more than magic. She's something out of the old stories. Something the children of the forest warned about." Arya frowned. "Then we find the children, the real ones. Maybe they know." Jon nodded slowly. "If any are left." Sansa looked around at the ruined valley. "Then where do we start?" Jon turned north again, his eyes locked on the far horizon. "Beyond the wall," he said. "There's something buried out there, and it's waking up." The journey beyond the wall was not just cold, it was haunting. Every tree seemed to whisper. Every shadow moved just slightly when no one was looking. Jon, Arya, and Jaime rode in silence with a small group of trusted free folk and northern scouts. The deeper they went, the more the world felt. Wrong. Snow fell like it had weight, heavy, endless. The wind didn't howl. It moaned, like it was mourning something ancient. The dead valley behind them already felt like a memory, and the deeper they pushed north, the more time itself felt strange. Ghost led ahead, nose to the ground, hackles raised constantly. He was more alert than usual, like he sensed something unnatural nearby. Jon trusted him more than he trusted any words or maps. They moved past what was left of Eastwatch, now nothing more than blackened stone and twisted bones. The sea near it had frozen solid, thick enough to ride horses across. Arya crouched near one of the destroyed towers. "This place burned," she said. not just frozen. Burned from the inside. Jaime looked over her shoulder. How do ice creatures burn things? Jon didn't answer. He was staring at the horizon. In the distance, the mountain split open, revealing a massive gorge. Thick ice covered everything, but beneath it, there were shapes, old structures, strange carvings, deep wounds in the land, like something had clawed its way out. What is this place? Jaime asked. I don't know, Jon said, but Bran once spoke of it. The true heart of the North. Before the first men, before the wall, even before the children. Arya looked uneasy. Then whatever we're looking for, it came from here. That night, they made camp near a frozen cave deep inside the mountains. The temperature dropped lower than anything they'd felt, and even fire couldn't hold it back. Men coughed up blood. Horses collapsed and froze in minutes. And then the dream started. Jon saw a tree made of bone. Faces hung from its branches like fruit. Arya walked into a hall made of mirrors, each reflection showing a different version of herself. Killer, child, monster. Jaime dreamt of the Red Keep, but it was covered in frost, and Cersei stood in the throne room, smiling with eyes that burned blue. They woke up drenched in sweat, though the cold still clung to them. She's near, Arya whispered. They went deeper the next morning, following an old path carved into the mountains. Strange symbols lined the ice walls, not of the children, but something older. Crueler, the free folk would not go farther. They refused. One of them, an old man named Tharn, grabbed Jon's arm. This place is cursed, he warned. This is where they made her. Jon's eyes narrowed. Made who? The cold daughter, Tharn said. We've spoken of her in whispers for generations. The children tried to lock her away after they created the Night King. She was their mistake. Too powerful. Too cruel. Not meant to live. Arya looked at him. Then why is she alive now? Tharn's eyes filled with fear. Because you killed the Night King, you broke the balance. Jaime let out a bitter breath. So in ending one evil, we woke another. Tharn nodded. She's not just another White Walker. She is the mother of death. She doesn't want the world frozen. She wants it silent. They continued alone. The cave system led them to a chamber far underground. The air was thick, still dead. In the center was a stone pedestal, cracked and glowing faintly. Jon stepped forward, drawn to it. Arya grabbed his shoulder. Don't. But it was too late. His fingers brushed the surface, and the world changed. Suddenly, they weren't in a cave anymore. They were standing in a forest, ancient, quiet, and full of sorrow. Before them stood the girl. Same pale skin, same black eyes. But here, in this strange vision, she looked human, innocent. Why did you wake me? She asked softly. Jon couldn't speak. Arya stepped forward. You've killed thousands. Why? The girl looked at her, sad and calm. Because I was left here, forgotten. They made me to end things. But then they changed their minds. Locked me away. Her voice changed, deeper, sharper. I remember what they did. Jaime spoke, his voice low. You want revenge. I want silence, she replied. The world is noise, pain, war. The living do not deserve their songs. Jon clenched his fists. We won't let you destroy it. She smiled faintly. You already have. You just don't know it yet. And then they were back in the cave. The pedestal had cracked open. A faint, icy light rose from it. And somewhere outside, the storm began. But it wasn't just wind and snow this time. It was her. Snow swallowed the world. The sky was no longer sky. It was a wall of white. Wind screamed like 1,000 voices in pain, and the earth cracked under the weight of the storm. Jon, Arya, and Jaime emerged from the cave just as the first signs of her power spread across the land. Far in the distance, they saw it, a towering figure in the heart of the storm, the Cold Daughter, walking with bare feet on ice that formed beneath her every step. Her black eyes glowed now, not with magic, but something worse, certainty. This was not a battle for her. It was cleansing. The snow turned sharp, like shards of glass cutting through armor and skin. Men screamed. Some fell without even being touched, their souls simply stolen, sucked into the storm. Jon pulled Arya and Jaime behind a crumbled wall of stone. "We're out of time. She's walking straight for Winterfell," Arya said. "She'll reach it in 2 days, maybe less." "We won't survive an army again," Jaime added. "Half our men are dead, and the rest can barely walk." Jon turned toward the cave, looking at the broken pedestal. That place, it didn't just show us her. It was built to hold her. Arya narrowed her eyes. "A prison." Jaime looked at Jon. "You're thinking of trapping her again?" Jon nodded. "We can't kill her, not like the others. She's too old, too powerful. But the children locked her once. We need to do it again." "But how?" Arya asked. Jon looked at them both, his voice cold, with fire and blood. They returned to Winterfell that night, what was left of them. Sansa's face dropped when she saw them. "You look like ghosts," she said. "We might be soon," Jon replied. They explained everything. The Cold Daughter, her prison, what she truly was. Sansa listened, and for once she didn't question. She knew when a storm was real. The plan was desperate. One final ambush. They would lure the Cold Daughter into the ruins of the cave and collapse the mountain on top of her. Seal her inside. Forever, if possible. To do that, Jon said, we'll need dragonfire. But there are no dragons left, Sansa said. Jon turned to her. There's one. Sansa's eyes widened. You don't mean Drogon? No one had seen Drogon since Daenerys died. Some said he flew east. Others said he flew north, guarding her body, waiting. Jon believed the latter. He had seen the dreams, felt the bond still there. That night, he rode alone to the ancient ruins near the shivering sea, where legend said the last dragon wept. There, among the ice, he found her. Daenerys, still preserved in a stone crypt, untouched by time or snow. And there, curled around her, asleep but still breathing. Drogon. Jon approached slowly. The dragon's eye opened, molten gold behind layers of frost. Jon didn't speak. He simply knelt. I need you, he said. Just one last time. The dragon stared for a long moment, then lifted his head and roared. The sound shook the cliffs. He remembered. 2 nights later, they prepared the trap. Arya hid near the cave, ready to trigger the collapse. Jaime stood at the far end, drawing the Cold Daughter in with fire, using himself as bait. Jon waited in the center. She came with the storm. The Cold Daughter stepped into the cave like she was walking home. Ice formed beneath her feet. Her eyes scanned the stone. She smiled faintly. You think you can stop me with rocks? No, Jon said, stepping forward. But I can slow you down. She reached for him, fingers like frost. That's when Drogon dropped from the sky. A roar of fire split the storm. The Cold Daughter screamed. The sound was unlike anything alive or dead. Her body cracked, split, tried to heal, but the fire kept burning. She wasn't dying, but she was weakening. Arya slammed her blade into the cave wall. The mountain groaned. Stone began to fall. No, the Cold Daughter shrieked. You don't understand. If I sleep again, something worse wakes. Let it, Arya whispered, and the cave came down. The last thing Jon saw was her eyes, wide with rage, not fear, before stone and snow buried everything. Then silence. 3 days later, the storm cleared. Winterfell stood. Jaime survived, barely. Arya walked with a limp now. Jon wasn't found for 2 days. They pulled him from the edge of the ruin, burned and frozen, but alive. The cold daughter was gone, or so they hoped. They never found her body. And in the deep of night, sometimes when the fire burns low, you can still hear her whisper, waiting.